think there's something interesting in the act of walking in itself, psychologically, and the impact that has on the brain, that has on the thought process. I think that's even more interesting when you put that into the company of cows, which are great big mammals with a kind of zen-like quality. You know, drovers would have gone at the cattle's pace because they didn't want the cattle to arrive all worn out and thin or hungry or weak. They wanted the cattle to arrive at market strong and happy and healthy and fit. So the cows would dictate the pace. Drovers' roots are absolutely everywhere. Probably a large amount of our roads are built on drovers' roots. Loads of our railways are built on drovers' roots, and loads of our now walking ways are built on drovers' roots. So there were many stories about cattle and droving and journeying across the land, and different ways that people moved across the land then, before we had trains and cars and planes. And the drovers of old were the people in the rural areas that would actually go to the cities. They'd go on long, perilous journeys through areas of the countryside with different accents, and they'd experience all kinds of different people. And the people certainly that went on the long journeys would have had some incredible stories to tell. You know, these were the wanderers, the journeyers, the explorers of the age, you know.
And the concept of herding, the idea of herding, the mechanics of herding, the culture of herding goes back, well, at least 5,000 years, probably longer. The concept of droving itself comes comparatively later because it is essentially a commercial concept.
To be part of a herd, I think, they see the people walking along in a group as part of a herd and they join in with it. They're not likely to run off from a collective like that. They'll stick with it. The herd animals, and I suppose that's half the way that they did it in practice, that they would have just joined in with the general flow of the way everybody was going.
It finished in mid-19th century with the coming of the railways, and also with things like fridges, so they could actually kill meat and bring it across the sea from abroad refrigerated. But they could also they had faster ways of bringing live animals as well, so they didn't need to walk them all over the place. So that's why droving finished. It wasn't really, I don't know that there was anyone necessarily to blame. It certainly was to do with the Industrial Revolution.
Would have been an immense thing coming through a city, you know, thousands of cows in one go, going to the slaughterhouses and coming off the boats and the trains and that sort of thing.
They were droving cattle from Galloway down to Norwich in the 16th and the 17th century, the market in Norwich, and the Pennine Way, the famous Pennine Way, was the great drover. Market in Dumfries was booming. Galloway was booming.
I know that they were very trusted people, the drovers that would have gone all the way to London, because they had a lot of money, a lot of wealth that they were being entrusted with. And so they were generally, I think, a bit older and married often, and kind of built up a reputation and a sort of trusted reputation. You had the trysts, which were the gatherings. I mean, essentially a big festival party, I think, when they kind of came into town with the cows and the market happened. It wasn't just men trading for cattle, it was everybody else kind of getting together, having a big, you know, a big party. People were finding their mates, you know, there was a bit of a festival going on.
Is it possible to drove cattle as people did back 150 years ago? Sadly, no. The rules on restrictions of movement on and off property would currently make that impossible. And it could only be done through a special dispensation, which would be very hard to get.
I've always had an affinity with this kind of thing. It's the getting away from your home community, I think, and going on this big adventure, this big travel, to somewhere you couldn't even imagine, London, and then going home again with the stories and the whole experience of having done it. But yeah, I've had a fascination with it for a long time.
A pastoral society where cattle are walked out to pasture every day and brought back again. Those cattle are going to be fitter, they're going to have harder feet, so they're going to be more able to withstand travelling a long distance.
The old cattle of Galloway, they just called the black cow, but it wasn't the modern Galloway, which is the hornless black Galloway. It was similar to the black Highland, which they also just called the black cow. And it was horned like the Highland, and it was semi-feral. It could survive on its own. My Highlands can as well. And all the Celtic languages, cow is boo, bow. And we get so many words in English and so many words in French as well from that. Butter, beef. Boadicea, famous Queen Boadicea. So that also translates as the victory queen, or it also translates as the virtuous queen. Cattle were virtue, they represented virtue. Cattle represented victory, bounty. The word bounty comes from the boo word. So all the people around here were called the booers. In Ayrshire, they still call a cowman a booer. They stand for a people, a way of life, the booers.
Getting wet on the second day, I think, brought a lot of authenticity to it. Had it been a lovely sunny day all the way through, we wouldn't have really known what it was like. When you get to the end of it and you've done half a drove, 5 miles, and your feet are soaking wet through and your modern waterproofs have already given up, and you think, well, we've got to do the same distance again, and then you get your very own hedge to sleep under and a bowl of gruel in the morning, cold gruel, and then you go and do it all again, and again and again and again until you get to London. So yeah, we got a kind of a taste of what it would have been like in reality because of the weather, I think.
The drovers would have come along this road and ended up in Dunmillington, which is the adjoining sort of village town, and the cows would have stayed overnight on their way to market in Ayr. There's a big cattle market in Ayr, used to be, and so this brings them up into the edges of Bellsbank, which is the town that you can see behind us now, and it's a very real route that drovers would have passed along. The drover could be seen as the symbol of that link of humanity to the cow, even to open up discussions about how we can somehow incorporate a greater understanding of the land and the animals around us with our modern technological life. We don't have to lose that connection, but we have to reconcile what our relationship is, not just to the land, but also to big animals, in this case cows.
My belief is that the landscape as we look at it in Britain is entirely artificial, and it should be forested. And haven't we cut down the forests over thousands of years to farm them? Then we pushed everything out in the Highlands to make room for more sheep, and now we manage it all as grouse moor. So what is our ideal British landscape? We probably all have our own idea in our mind of what it should look like.
The idea that you just put sheep over all may have appealed, from a commercial point of view, and it may have seemed very practical and may have worked very well, and they made you more money, but biodiversity went out the window. It's all gone. It's all gone. It'll never be recovered the way it was. It cannot be. And that's the Scotland we inherited in the 30s and the 40s, yeah.
there's many people all around the world that still walk with their animals. They either practice transhumance, which is when they walk from winter to summer pastures with their herds, or a sort of nomadic pastoralism where they cover larger areas of land, moving more constantly with their herds, following grazing and water. People that walk more regularly with their animals, they need to have quite a great understanding and a sensitivity to their environment and to the elements around them, and also to how their animals react to these factors. And they need to be able to deal with changes in the environment, and they need to be great innovators and problem solvers. In 2015, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, which is the main advisor to the UN on international conservation affairs, they actually found that mobile pastoralism has great benefits for both the environment and humanity, and that in some countries it's actually economically the best use of land, and also contributes to biodiversity and climate change mitigation. And they say that mobile pastoralism should be considered a key element as we make the transition into a global green economy.
And here we come to the nub of the matter, which is this kind of tension between, the people that say we need intensive farming to feed our ever-expanding population, and those that say, well, if we intensively farm the whole world, what will we have left?